order. The first thing we need to do is amend and approve the new agenda. If you look at the second page. Does anyone have a motion to approve the amended agenda as it is?
I move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The minutes, do you have regular minutes as well, right?
Yeah, they're in the
All right. Next page is the minutes of our last meeting, which was especially called Hay. Sorry, we got to quorum and we went.
Run, quorum, run.
Better late than never.
Before I'm buzzing through this.
Just approve the new schedule.
In an effort to get that agenda, I want to welcome Betty to our meeting. Thank you. Of course, thank you always for being here and supporting us. And Daryl.
Yep.
I think we've all met before. He runs the Roswell North Science and Technology Foundation, right? For probably not the technical term, but generally.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. Welcome. This might be really way too exciting when you see what's on our agenda. Sorry. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting of June 26th?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 26th.
Second.
All in favor?
Wait, before you do that, when the draft minutes I put in there, I couldn't get the recording from the last half of the meeting, but I got it now off of this machine. So it didn't show who made and seconded those last motions. I think I need to probably read it.
Well, you've got executive session by Mims, second by Hessler.
I'm talking about, number 14, motion to approve the attorney agreement. That was Schmidt and Mims. The 16, adopt the resolution in support of option 2 on Historic Gateway was, that one was Schmidt and Lyon. Then the Gateway one was Mims and Mills, and adjournment was Schmidt and Mims. That's all I want to say.
Ralph, you want to amend your motion
Please.
to include Stephanie's additions?
Okay, I make a motion to accept the minutes from June 26th with the amended notation of Stephanie. Does that work?
Second. That's okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we also have minutes from our executive session. Is everybody, Stephanie, tell me if I can do this. Can we just pass this around and bring it up at the end of the meeting to approve?
If you want to change order of business, it's fine to do that, because everybody needs to get a chance.
There's only one copy. It's from our closed meeting. Everybody just needs to take a look at it. I'll pass it and just pass it back. And we could bring it up before we adjourn and go ahead and approve those minutes. I don't want to hold everybody up. Okay. Now for the most exciting part. Stephanie and I met with Wendy is the city risk manager, right?
Yes.
Head of risk management yesterday, and we reviewed several of the options we had available as far as our D&O insurance. And through that conversation, we also got on I guess he's the agent with Aon that handles all the city's insurance as well, and kind of talk back and forth. Bottom line, we had two to choose from. One is a pool. That's a government pool. Pull this back. Which known as GIRMA. That is a pool of authorities and municipalities that put their risk together and are basically self-insured. For this, the recommendation, and then we have a local agent located here in Roswell that made another proposal. Both of the premiums were initially very similar, within $30. I mean, very, very similar. The only thing is the GIRMA, and I think everybody got copies of that if you want to read through that. The problem with it is that it has a minimum, as we've dug through it, it has a minimum of $4,000 plus of a premium to get the same coverage that we can get for about $900 from an independent insurer. The Brandon from Aon recommended that if the numbers are similar, that his recommendation would be to go with an independent insurer, an independent company.
The only difference was the aggregate value for the Burma policy was $5 million, and for the private policy was $2 million.
Yes, $2 million. But
Aggregate, not.
since our meeting, I've learned a lot more about insurance. And it's because I sat down and spent an hour kind of going through this whole thing. You know what? I just got this. I wonder if I can get a copy. There's several kinds of insurance that we need. First is the directors and officers insurance, which is for, and right now what we have is putting that on here at $1 million. That alone is $512. Merging that with the all right, y'all, this EPL with third-party combined aggregate. What that means is that we will actually have, even though it says employees, it's employees and acknowledges that we are volunteers, so that they will spend, there's a limit of up to $1 million on directors and officers, up to $1 million on additional defense. So it means if you had something, a claim against the board, they would spend up to $1 million defending you, and then $1 million if there was a settlement. So it's in that capacity. There's a brain cramp. $1,000 deductible. Thank you. $1,000 deductible on each D&O claim, and $1,000 EPL, which with third party each claim. The way I've come to understand it is that it really, the nominal additional cost of having the EPL as well as the directors and officers is really worth it, because it covers their claims as far as discrimination, harassment, yeah, those kinds of things, and a whole lot of things that just kind of fall in this weird place that D&O would not cover. It's not much, and it deals with your third-party issues. If we had an intern working for us, if we had, if we were hiring a third party to, say, maintain a property that we had acquired or something like that, it covers a lot of those things. Okay. The next, I think I would recommend that we definitely do that.
And the premium difference is?
It goes from $512 to $945.
Okay.
If we want to increase the D&O to $2 million, it's an additional, you just add the $512 again. So it's $1,457 for a $2 million cap on the D&O.
That's per incident.
Per incident. Well,
What's the aggregate?
the aggregate, it would be $4 million aggregate.
Okay. Was there general liability also?
General liability is additional. General liability, I just got this information. General liability would be $289 at $1 million for the year.
$289.
$289. And I've got that on a firm quote. There was a fidelity bond that was recommended both on the phone the other day when we were talking to Brandon, which they quoted it for everything. It basically as if one of us were to steal money from the DDA, basically. And it's $413 for everybody. Well, I said they really highly recommended our treasurer being covered. So I said, can we get it down to just one person? And it's $168 a year to have just the treasurer.
He is a gator.
So there should be no need.
Tell them that it might be
There should be no need then.
That means we grow the pot, we don't
Okay.
take it away.
And there was just a possibility, $1 million non-owned auto liability, $130 a year. We didn't talk about this, but just FYI, that's available too. I mean, you can overinsure yourself like crazy, but I think that gets us up. We're, even with picking it up to $2 million, we're still under $2,000. And if we went to GERMA, we were at $4,500.
I carry all those, I'm sure you do too. All the additional, the
You do?
fidelity, the non-owned, the EPL, basically the other one sounds like a little business owner's policy.
Mm-hmm. So do you recommend the non-owned auto liability? I mean, this is a little,
I don't know.
Can I back, I'm sorry I didn't study this closely, but just backing up a little bit just to.
I just got up a meeting at 11, I promise, this is new news.
We have the GERMA and then we have Alan Fuhrer as the
Uh-huh.
independent.
Right.
Okay. And right now, we're saying that I see a limit of $1 million here for D&O on the front page of his. And
Yep.
you're proposing in a matchup between the two, how much for
Pretty-
Allen's
yeah.
and how much for GERMA?
Thank you.
Or is there
Oh, you just gonna go make a copy of it all?
is that a summary of everything?
That's a new one that has, it raised, it's on the bottom of there. It's on the bottom. If you look down at alternative options, if you look,
Right.
number 2, that's the one we're looking at.
Okay, so I got.
But it's
Is
$945.
this from today?
We don't have a copy of this.
Before.
From
Where's that from?
From the first meeting in June, if you have your agenda.
If you flip back in June,
Okay, I've got a June 5th. This is dated June 5th.
yeah,
So we got 512 and 945 gets us a $2 million
we're going to
aggregate.
get copies, it's all coming.
Right, a $2 million aggregate D&O.
Correct.
All right, so that's Allen at $2 million.
And my recommendation is that we take it up to $2 million, separate limit from DNO, with a $4 million aggregate,
Okay, and to do that, you add
512.
another, so it's 512 plus 945 plus
Correct.
512.
Absolutely.
And that gets us to $4 million.
Mhm.
All right.
The GERMA policy was $4,375.
For how much?
For $5 million.
For $5
There
million.
was a $5 million
per
aggregate,
incident,
but it was,
$5 million aggregate.
yeah, it was $1 million per incident.
That was 4,000 something?
$4 million.
I mean, the total was 4,000. What was the premium for the $5 million?
$4,375.
But it's not, it's $1 million per incident.
Right.
Under the GERMA?
Uh-huh.
And what is
5
it?
million aggregate.
And what is it per incident on the Allen Fuhrer?
I was the $2 million per incident.
Okay. Well, on apples to apples, certainly on the top line, we're half the cost or less
At least, yeah.
to go with the independent. So,
Twice the amount per incident.
and we have
Twice the amount per
a little bit smaller aggregate, but we have more on an incident. It's
Mhm.
twice the incident for half the premium. So,
What's the deductible on each one?
They're both 1,000.
Okay.
so deductibles are the same.
Thank you.
And is there anything that we found, or Monica, you found on the independent insurer that's missing?
I did
Like,
not.
I mean, do you
No, I
have-
came back and went and filled that in. That's what I did today.
Okay. So we're not,
You know what, I'm just going to keep one in.
is this a third one?
No, this is a copy of,
They only sent me the,
you have this already, I think.
Well, I have an Alan Fuhrer. This one says agency.
Oh, I'm
marketing at the
sorry.
top.
yeah, this is has more detail and,
This is attention.
Oh, okay, I got you.
yeah, still, I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay.
I will tell you a couple things I learned. I mean, I met with one of the agents at Allen and Furr. He's obviously been in the business a long time. And we walked all the way through why you would need it. And it will be retroactive to when our board began. So we have no known issues. If the, we were to drop this like next year, you have 60 days to make any claims. And then the next policy, if you got it, you'd want it retroactive back to January of 2012. That you always want to take it back when the insurance went in place. I think that is very, very typical. That's just so that you're covered, even if something comes up 5 years down the road that happened back here. And I think one of the things that, in looking at that if D&O insurance were to be dropped, and 2 years down the road somebody came and made a claim, you would have no coverage. So I think
Would you just go back to the company that had it that year?
I
That's
thought
what we
so,
do-
too.
That's what we do with liability or
It's in an
everything
instant-
else.
I know the answer to this one because of my business. It's on a claims-made basis. It's on a
Exactly.
It's on a claims-made basis, and you buy a tail. It goes down. No, but when I retire, I'm gonna do this.
that's exactly the incident he was talking about.
But
Yeah.
I've said there's so many boring seminars on this.
So it's not when the event occurred, it's when the claim is made. So really, you have, what is the statute then? Is it 3 years?
60 days.
No, but I mean,
Statute.
for making a claim, for somebody on the street making a claim against us for whatever.
I don't know of any limitation, that we didn't talk about that, but legally, I don't think you.
There has to be some statute.
I don't know.
Just to ask a simple question, how much different are we than the coverage that the city has for
That's
its
what I
city
was going to
council
get to.
members?
If we were meeting, that's really important because you don't need the vehicles owned and like the design review board. If you slip and fall,
The
when
city.
it's the
That's
city.
part of the city. The
So
city
how
says
independent are
1
we?
million per incident, 5 million aggregate is what the city has.
Are we covered under that?
No, you're
Not at all.
How much per incident?
A million.
1 million.
So we
which
would
You
have-
can't get over
The other-
3 million without having a lot of money, I mean, in 2 years, 3 years, we could up it if you wanted to, or if we needed to.
Right now
But
you-
right now, we don't qualify. I mean, 2 million is probably about as good
In
as
that
we
case,
get.
I think that the EPL and the non-owned vehicles would be a good idea. I ran into this with my church.
Okay.
In a pretty
Further, when and if we take title to a piece of property, well, now we have property insurance,
Yep.
relative to that, which is a different insurance.
Right.
So
Sure.
And
we're
we talked,
strictly
and
in-
I talked to them about that. That's one of the reasons I have to say I definitely wanted to make sure, we talked to them and make sure they could handle. It'd be great to be able to pick up the phone and say,
One group.
we're requiring this. And we talked about at some, when we do that, establishing standard criteria. So you don't have one policy that covers this and one policy that's different, that when we call up and say we're going to acquire X, we need this, that they'll know what we need, and then we can kind of keep it clean. Then all of it will be independent, so that, because it's very possible we could acquire something and own it for a very short period of time. You still need to be covered, but we'd be able to cancel it independently without having to rewrite an entire larger policy.
The other difference between the two is this Allen and Fur is an annual contract, annual renewal. The Gerber one, they want to
2 years.
get you in for 2 years, which
Well, it's less
prefer to
expensive,
be-
It always
yeah.
concerns you why something's half the other thing. What are we missing? It's a big difference.
You know what, Wendy kind of explained it a little bit, is that there have been times, because the city used to be in a pool at one point.
Yeah, those stories aren't really adding up.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, it's a pool where they can, and we didn't see anything in our documentation where you're pooled, and so you share the risk of a lot of other entities, and you also spread the risk of a lot of other entities. But if there was a shortfall, and she's indicated they have deep reserves, but if there's a shortfall, that additional claim would be spread out among all the holders. Again, we didn't get, did you get an answer on whether we would be?
That's what I was, wasn't real clear on the question. She's on vacation, so I had to call on her cell phone. And we played phone tag, and what her indication was that their reserves are deep enough that that's not gonna happen.
But that is the,
But Wendy's is
That's
saying it did
Kermit's.
happen.
but that's why they charge you $4,000, is that there's a minimum, if you look at their thing, it says, you know, because I kept saying, why is this not, I mean, $900 and $500 is not 4,000. I mean, what, please help me understand this. And then at the very bottom, it says, where is it? You know, if I opened this a second ago, I would have found that in a heartbeat. When you want to see it.
She verified that to me on the phone, that it was the minimum.
It's the minimum.
Yeah.
So the minimum contribution amount applied, which is on
Okay,
this
that
one.
answers the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why, yeah.
Okay.
I felt the same thing. I went back even to them and said, is this per board member? I mean, I was trying to get it
Yeah.
reconciled a little
They factor it
closer.
by population somehow. I mean, like, from what Wendy was saying, it's like the size of the city, the size of the entity.
Even regardless if we just have, right.
And the reason you probably don't want to go over the 2 million is you don't want to over-insure yourself and invite people to
Right.
take you up to that
You
amount.
become a target.
Yeah.
So 2 million might be maybe too high, but I wanted to have the answer for you if
2
you
million
wanted
is the
that.
right number.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
$1 million doesn't matter in today's world, it's so little.
Well, what I liked about this, which is different than Burma, is it's $1 million in defense and $1 million in settlement. So you really have a $2 million, where Burma is just $1 million. It's $1 million to defend, it's $1 million.
Personal umbrella cover it.
It'll cover some of the general liability.
Our personal umbrella?
You mean our individual?
Homeowner insurance, or, yeah, it can, but you probably don't want to do that to yourself.
One of my thoughts was, do we want to make a resolution that the DDA is required to maintain D&O insurance going forward and not lapsing? Because, you know, if we were to not be, you know what I mean? It's just,
Is something like that a motion, or should it be a policy, just a policy that we maintain? We need to
it'd
have
almost
some
be an
basic-
amendment to the bylaws, wouldn't it?
Amendment to your bylaws if you want moving forward.
Forward.
That's
I think that would be a great idea. I don't know. I would just like, you know, future boards to kind of keep it in place on our behalf. Or on, you know, just, it's just good policy, because otherwise it's, you know, we're, just as long as it's in, everybody involved is always covered.
Amen. I think that's a good idea. I'm trying to figure out about, okay, I think it should, so we're saying a motion for the,
To amend our bylaws?
amend our bylaws to include
Continuous coverage of
Mandatory
insurance.
D&O insurance. I mean, I think that's the one you're most concerned about. At a minimum level of $1 million?
Yes.
I wouldn't. I'm sorry.
Or just say at a reasonable minimum.
I think I might.
Well, what
It's not
about
gonna
I think
change
I-
so often.
I can't believe it'll go down.
Charles, you in the middle of the motion?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I would suggest we deal
Yeah.
with the insurance right now, and then let's see about what we want to propose to draft. And a new, I've looked in here, there's nothing in here for insurance, so we gotta add a new paragraph or something, so.
Right.
In the bylaws, so I would suggest for another meeting that a draft be done, and then everybody can read it, and then we can. All right.
That sounds good.
Other than trying to draft.
We've got a year.
Trying to come up with a motion now, it's something we have to study.
If we go forward, we gotta have a year where you're covered. Yeah. Okay.
So,
Well, let's just make a note on that that's something that we're going to put together. Okay, on insurance, guess I'm not really the place to make a motion, but Dave Lyons is starting to fill out the application as we speak.
It's harder than Chinese arithmetic, too.
I could get somebody. Why do you think I gave it to you? I just didn't want to. I've learned too much about insurance in the last couple of days.
Business.
As the one who kind of picked up on the researching of this, I would recommend that we go with the Allen and Fur dated June 4th, alternate option number 1, but increasing the 2 million separate limit for D&O, 4 million aggregate, for a approximate premium of $945 plus $512. And I would recommend that we do the general liability at for $1 million at $289 per year. Would you recommend the fidelity bond, Charles? Did you do this for everybody? It's $413 for everybody.
And it's 162 for just one?
Mm-hmm. 168.
Are you familiar with fidelity bonds?
Never need to know. Not really.
I think that's, I don't know enough about the animal to say. I know that we carry them for the retirement, for managing people's retirement
Right,
assets.
right. Imagine
But we carry it as a firm.
Well, to cover the position of treasurer only, it's 168. So, I could go either way. The $1 million non-owned auto liability is $130 a year. So that sounds like a no-brainer. But
I think we should take it on everybody just simply because there's 3 of us on the checking account, right?
yep.
There's 3 names.
Well, then, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That answers it.
All
Well,
right.
the other thing, if you put it on everybody, then as roles change,
Correct.
Right. It's already there.
then you don't have to go back and
That's right.
redo
Well, it would
it.
only be on the position of treasurer. It wouldn't be on an individual. It would be just in that position.
That's right. That's the throw Dave under the bus policy.
How you have a policy?
Well, I mean, if you got 3
Of course,
people
the other
inside,
issue is
and only one is insured, that means automatically he has to be the one that did something wrong.
I would second that
Insurance company
motion.
won't see it that way.
I would second that motion for the non-owned automobile, the fidelity bond for the group, the general liability, and the extra $1 million plus the base policy at 945. Is that your
Yes.
motion? I second
I didn't make a motion, so you made the motion.
I'll make a
Can someone
motion.
second that?
I'll second it.
Anybody, any discussion, any other questions?
And just to clarify, what was the total amount of our premium now? Just to-
2,457.
Okay, got it.
it.
Okay.
That's
We're-
going
we're
back
doing
to
this.
everyone being.
Go ahead and have it.
What that includes is the 2 million separate limit for D&O, $4 million aggregate at 1457, 289. I can't keep this stuff straight. Just want to make sure I have all this right here. 289 is $1 million general liability. It's even less. Sorry, I had that. I had the 168 plus the 413. 130 is the non-owned auto liability, and 413 is for the fidelity bond for everyone. So that's less. It's about 2,000. Yes, 2,000 something. Well, not quite. It's 2289.
Traveler's application that we originally used should be in the Dropbox. If you want to borrow that, just fill that out. Probably
That's right.
Okay.
I forgot about
Once you
that.
get to a specific company, they have to use their application.
I forgot about that. Okay, we did provide that.
All right, so we need to close with a vote?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It passes. And, I'll get you those numbers so you can make sure you get this. We're missing Richard. All right. That's great.
Excellent.
So now we can go into real exciting. I mean, now we can make things happen. It will be retro to January, just so you know. That was just starts.
So it's really only good for another 6 months.
Oh no, it goes from July to July. The price goes retro to January. Charles that way.
Okay, so it is like a year and a half. Okay.
I think that going back to the beginning is something that's really typical, and as long as you don't have any claims, they're willing to do it. I think it's not really an extra charge to go retroactively. All right, we're on the revised agenda.
Right, DDA council discussion.
Yeah. We have a couple, Charles. Obviously, we need to get another council in place. I would, thinking back on the things we've been looking at over the last few weeks, I think one of the things in vetting out and looking at the next attorney, we need someone who not only understands our restrictions as the government, component of us, and the Open Meetings Act and how we have to do our business, but someone who also has the capacity, either in their firm or individually, to execute some pretty complicated partnership agreements or however we want to do our business going forward, that understands the business of real estate and can take the business terms negotiated by members and put them into a document that protects us as a board and all that. That's what I've kind of come back and thought. We really need kind of some a deeper bench on that, I think. Charles and David, did y'all, in talking, I've got a couple names. I don't know if you've talked to these people that were recommended. Did you talk to Wendy Butler?
Yes,
You talked to Wendy
I
Butler.
did. And I spoke with her partner, who is from, she's of counsel with the firm Coleman Talley, and there's a fella who is in Albany who is quite the development authority person. Wendy's not going to be doesn't do that much development authority work or even that much real government work. She's more of a private sector person. She was going to be working in conjunction with them. I did talk with both of them and did the little interview.
I understand she's on the Decatur DDA.
She might be.
Rich mentioned her name.
Rich.
DiPolito mentioned her name. And I believe she was involved, I'm trying to think of what project she was involved with here in the city, but they had a lot of moving parts, and apparently that's just and then Thompson, Pat O'Brien with Thompson O'Brien. Yeah, I haven't gotten it all the way down, but I have their phone number too. If it's the same.
I did not speak with him. I spoke with a partner who was a Gwinnett County engineer, and I have my notes out in the car. I can go have a file I can bring in. There's O'Brien. They do. City of Norcross is really pretty much their only city client like that. They have been involved in a number. That's their client on an ongoing basis. Okay. They're a good sized firm. They do a lot of other work. And I know that you have worked with them some, Lonnie. There's a little bit younger guy who used to be with Gwinnett County Engineering, and he was, when I was interviewing, O'Brien wasn't available, so he was the guy that I carried forward with. So we could talk with them again. I think they'd be strong.
I just didn't know if y'all talked to either of those, so that's.
Yeah, I did. So we did speak with both of them, both firms, and then in that firm, Bert Nasuti is the Gwinnett County Commissioner, and although that's not his area of practice, there is. We could certainly pick that up. My thinking is that if we're going to open up for re-interviewing, that maybe Dave and you take it forward and go. I mean, I'll be happy to turn over my notes, especially if, for instance, we're doing somebody like this, where we have written documentation in Dropbox on Wendy Butler, and I think that I don't know if the other firm actually sent something or not. The token. I don't think I actually went that far with them. But we could open it up with them.
So are you saying you don't want to do this? You don't want to go back and look at
I
it?
just think that if I think that I'd like to get some fresh eyes looking in on it. I mean, I'd be happy to.
I'm going to be out of town for the next couple of weeks, so I think we need somebody, whoever's going to be in town that could kind of pick this up with you, David. Okay, you gonna?
I'll be in town.
David knows the sequence of kind of what we've
Yeah.
asked, and he and I worked real well together on this. The second play, there were two firms that we interviewed when we kind of did the last round of interviews, and the other firm was
Dan McRae's.
Dan McRae's firm. So, if you
But that
kind
was
of-
the large firm, right?
Yes.
Was there
Large
too small
firm.
and too big at the end, or no?
No, that was the first cut.
Okay.
It was too small and too big.
Gotcha.
And then when we went, basically the short list was those two firms.
But wasn't Dan McRae, didn't he have some pretty high billing rates?
He does.
Yeah.
But he's also got some younger associates that can handle the day-to-day and the open meeting stuff. I'm generally not inclined to use big law firms.
I think we definitely were like, and the consensus was, I think we'd like to find a smaller firm. You want to jump on this?
I'll help. I don't deal with attorneys, so I can ask questions, but I try to avoid it.
Those two that you asked about, was that just, they were people that you had had good referrals to? Or?
Yeah, well, I talked to Lonnie, he's the one, that I wasn't sure if we had mentioned, with Pat O'Brien, he mentioned that firm. I didn't know if we'd looked at them, I just didn't have my list.
We had talked, I'd had a couple of occasions.
In your Dropbox information, you kind of have a little synopsis of the discussion, the area you progressed, et cetera, or is it more of a?
More, I do have script and notes
Okay.
on some of them that we talked with, but not all of them.
I
and
really
need to look
appreciate all the
back.
work you put into that. I mean,
Well, that's fine. We need to get to.
Well, I'll tell you what,
someone that
let's,
we're gonna have a good
you
working
and I get
relationship.
together first part of next week,
Did they tell you
and
that
we'll review it.
There was somebody that was fit the profile. How was it left?
With token? No,
They say they don't have anybody.
they weren't that, oh, no. I feel like O'Brien would fit, and I was talking to probably his junior partner, the guy that probably wasn't his. I think that they didn't seem to be that involved in doing a lot of what we're doing, but then I don't think that many attorneys are. I think it's kind of.
It's a pretty unique niche, yeah.
There's a few that make a big practice out of it, and then there's a lot that represent cities and by extension, the DDA also. That's the majority of the small firms that you run in, smaller firms, that's what you run into.
I guess when I look at the list of things or the projects that we're all considering, some of them are really complicated and some are really creative. I mean, they're definitely coming at, what our role's going to be, we haven't decided. But how do you find someone that can take it, doing things maybe, trying to do some creative problem solving, creative projects, some of the ones we've talked about.
You might want to consider broadening your reach to attorneys that typically handle development authorities, because they tend to do those kind of projects more. Most DDAs are in fairly sleepy towns that do a lot of events and promotions and things like that, but they're not doing a lot of real estate deals, or just not getting those kind of projects in their towns. But development authorities are more likely to have that kind of setup, and like Dan McRae does a fair share of development authorities as well. Probably more of that than DDAs, I would imagine. So there may be some more out there.
I wonder if with Dan, whether you'd have an associate who could be here on just strictly the governance side of running our meetings and so forth, which could be a junior guy, might be $200 an hour, $225 or something. I mean, Ken was remarkably inexpensive, to be honest. And, and when you need a Dan, you can pull that resource, recognizing it's expensive, but what comes with it is
Right.
every tool in the toolbox, okay? So-
Absolutely.
So I guess I would, based on what I'd heard, I haven't dived into it, but you either got a Seathurst Shaw with a junior guy that can be here at these meetings, and he's at a reasonable rate, and we know we got Dan in the background. When a deal comes up, he's one of the top attorneys in the state for creative development deals. Or the other side is whether the Wendy Butler approach, which Wendy's pretty creative on the real estate side, but how do we handle the governance side through Cole Metallic? That's, to me, that's two choices. I don't know about the other ones very well, but I know those two firms at least, and they'd be a little different.
Have you done business with Wendy? Or watched?
Yeah, not through a full transaction and such, but I know she's got reach in a lot of different, between the MARTA board and some other things, that she's actively involved in a lot of things that have public-private components to them.
Okay.
And so I just wonder between those two, which is back to the big firm, small firm, can we get what we want in the big firm with a reasonably priced attorney who Seathurst Shaw can say will be at $225? I don't even know if they're base lawyers at that level, but
I've got his proposal.
do you? Or the Wendy side, which the concern is that Wendy's not the one to sit in this meeting, because she's I don't think she's a government-based attorney, but does she have an affiliate through Cole Metalli that is? So, other than that, I don't know about the other two choices and such, but.
Can you, since you've talked to him too, can you guys come
I'll
up
be
with a
happy
recommendation?
Yeah, we'll
don't
get
think we
together
wanna
first
wait
part of
3
the
weeks.
week, and then we'll follow up. We'll ask.
And maybe I need to be with y'all when you regroup,
Mhm.
just to kind of debrief and make sure that you have everything that I have. And I can fill you in with who I spoke with and what they said.
But it sounds like the consensus is we're going to do what you had mentioned, what David mentioned about going and checking with those two first, the Wendy and the Dan McRae firm, see if they might have a, shall we call it a blended group that can work with us, or are we going to?
Yeah. If somebody would like to talk with Token,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the question is whether, since if we're going to open it up,
Okay.
I think we go ahead and open it up. And talk
I think
with those
we're,
three.
I guess my gut is I read through the revised Open Meetings Act, and I'll make sure that's on the Dropbox. I don't think it is. I've got it, and I've read through it. It's like 10 pages. We should, we're working on getting our procedures down a little bit. There's some key things that we can do that will make sure that whole transition is a little bit easier. I think once we get those procedures down, having an attorney here, making sure we're on point, that it qualifies as if we go into executive session would be important. But a lot of that is going to get down just getting our feet wet, getting the procedures down and things that we do. Again, to have started and then have the whole act rewritten, several months after we started. It wasn't completely, but there were some changes that affected the timing. I think that's a component of it, but I don't think that needs to be the emphasis, the total emphasis. So being able to bring someone in that understands that would be real important. Okay, so can y'all just come back with recommendation at our next meeting? The next thing is the resolution requesting funding from Rossville City Council. I was wondering if you all have had a chance to read that drafted resolution. That would be in your June. You didn't bring your notebook, did you?
We're minimalist today.
I don't blame them. This thing, I walk in and they laugh at me every time I go through the.
We have to search all the pages when you come through, so.
Yeah.
I have a couple of copies of it, copies.
That'd be great. If it's not trouble, that'd be phenomenal. I can't even find mine. I have the whole month of June here. We had this. 3 meetings in June.
Two of them.
I think.
Kid, one of the attorneys.
And all this insurance stuff.
I know that was a handful. That was very good.
For 48 hours worth of insurance learning.
One of the pitchers at Tech, so.
It's called Dive In.
World Series.
Just as a matter of background, Monica, this resolution that's put forth, which really says we're asking for a pool of unrestricted dollars, lightly restricted dollars, that says that we have an ability to rotate that pool in projects with payback schedules and so forth. Was this something that was floated at council level, or any feedback from the mayor? I mean, is this in terms of
No, this was really a
its ability to
result.
be executed?
This is a result, was really for discussion at this point. Two meetings ago, we had a conversation about a bunch of projects that fit. We tried to draft, what Ken tried to do is draft the criteria based on those fitting those projects without defining those projects, since none of those are ready to go. And you all have a July 12th, is it when you start drafting, you start slicing and dicing?
The budget.
The bond referendum?
Bond.
Is that on the agenda?
I wrote that down at one of the Greenville meetings.
June 12th, we looked over what we thought we'd do next, and we decided that we were debating whether we would do a November referendum or a March or some other time, and the feeling was, because we didn't have a solid anchor project in the can ready to really pursue, that we would go along for a while as if we're going for the November, and then if we still don't feel like we're where we need to be, we'll look at another date.
Procedurally, when do you have to cut off to do all the advertising and all that?
Yeah.
August? Okay.
And in August, it doesn't have to be the final list, it just has to be the categories or the wording for the
category.
ballot. And then we can fill in, but we were all over the map on how that should go, so
Right.
we punted.
So you're not to the point where you know where what that looks like.
Monica, understanding the nature of a sort of rotating pool of dollars,
Yeah.
as much as $5 million, to say we can move it in and move it out relative to certain requirements within our purview, that I sort of like the idea that before we put it out there, we've trial ballooned it. Is it, what kind of feedback are we going to get? Is it something that staff or council can see as a good direction?
Well, before we did that, I wanted to make sure you guys were comfortable with the wording.
I
didn't want it to go anywhere unless
Gotcha.
everybody here said, yeah, this is what we meant, Yeah.
I think there were two things here. I think there's some interest in doing some kind of a loan initially to do a specific project, and then potentially, it's a little trickier with the bonds being rotating. I'm not sure how that would play, but it could. Legally, that would be a question. If you're going to use bond money to purchase property, and then you turn around and sell that property and you get the money back, I don't know that that's a bondable thing.
Because usually when you do a bond, it's for some capital improvement.
Right.
It's
Well,
specific.
and purchasing it would be okay, but if
Purchasing would
we're
be
going to.
okay, but if you're just purchasing it to then turn around and sell it, that may be.
Right, and that's one of the things that we've looked at, is that assembling certain parcels together to make them more marketable to the right developer would be something we'd like to possibly be able to do. We don't plan on that being a long-term hold. So
That might be a better loan project than
project.
bond project, because bond, it needs to be something you see within a certain amount of time that money gets spent on it. If we're just basically doing it as a self-loan, I'm not sure if that
Right.
Okay.
plays, but,
Well, how does this play into what the type of financing,
the loan portion.
the thing that Kay was talking about the other day?
You mean when I shared with Nancy that, no, I wasn't talking, it wasn't 5 or 3, it was 5 and
And
3.
three.
Yeah.
So that might
if-
be a little stretch, but you can always ask. Just,
And I think ultimately, I think there's going to be a need to do a pilot loan bond somewhere.
Right.
If you guys bite the bullet and do that, I don't know. Once you get, then you've got your credit rating, then you start moving, and it probably is more efficient than us.
Okay.
But that, in a quick turnaround situation, like I think we're thinking we might be faced with, we're open to try.
Different, doing something. But if there was, say, another project that didn't have the urgency component, that was more relaxed on its time, it would be appropriate to put this forth to the council.
This doesn't specifically say how the money would have,
No,
how we would provide it.
Um,
Does it talk about the bond?
I believe it does. It
Yeah,
was specific.
bonded indebtedness.
Yeah, bond.
Yeah, it was totally about that. Well, here's the question. We can, on our list of projects, there are some that are specific parcels, that are specific acquisition opportunities. We could discuss those and be more, define this more specifically.
I think that's the challenge that city council's having right now, is to say, we've got X amount of dollars, we're trying to find a project to invest in, nothing is headed to the front of the line that says it's executable. There's a lot of ideas out there, but there hasn't been anything that's been able to hit. So this, whether it's executable or not, tries to say, put a amount set aside of money
Absolutely.
within the authority that says, well, if you can't understand what it's going to be for the bond specifically, that you're moving into the authority, and the authority is going to be able to have the flexibility to buy and develop. And I just question whether we have that ability to be that loose,
And
kind of with some
ultimately-
dollars that are not designated.
Right, and ultimately, I think the bond money is probably more appropriate in infrastructure or specific improvements that we can make that will stay there.
Okay, what if we?
So, if you want to ask for the money, I would say, rather than say where you think it's going to come from, let us see if we figured it, what our best option is to do that. Just, if you want the money, say, here's what we want, and then.
Well, the other side of if you stay away from the bond and you go toward a credit facility with the city or through the city's backing to a bank, well, then you execute it at the time you have something.
Like line of credit.
It more acts like a line of credit, and so until we have anything, there's no money. No money's moved. It's just
And I think
access to
that's kind of
funds,
where we were going
more
with
so
the $3
than
million.
put $5 million in our checking account.
Right.
Right.
I mean, to me, both on the public side as well as, okay, you got dollars there, they got to have a return to them. They got to have payback. Why do we have that? So.
And our
But-
mechanism would likely be swapping an asset for an asset, so there really needs to be that
Yeah.
plan for it. before we-
So I think it's more access to capital.
Right.
And then you come back to, well, the city has an ability to use the credit line of the city,
We'll
as
talk
opposed to we can go.
Finance director about that.
Yeah.
What's that?
Kay
We'll
was-
talk to the finance director,
Okay.
Kay, about that.
Because I also think there's aren't there other sources of credit through the state and other agencies that can be afforded through the authority as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, so I mean,
You
we're
can
just
go
not,
directly to-
we do want to explore the city's capacity, let's say.
Yes.
To
That's
provide
what we
that
will
tool,
ask the city
not at the
to
exclusion
ask.
of some other tools that still can't be triggered until a real project happens, it's got financials behind it and so forth.
What if we, this is a non-location specific, but the idea of parking facility has been floated in several different locations. What if some of that bond money went to, that's not going to be something that makes money, I don't think.
Unless you charge.
I really haven't, I'm the biggest skeptic on that one. I'm eventually, yes, but I think it's hard to build what we want to build. But if you could you designate it for a use? For example, a parking facility?
It's going to be on public property.
But then you'd be back to what we put it in the bond. If we've got a plan for a parking deck, then
Where-
the bond directly, if we
Right.
managed it for the
Right,
city,
yeah,
that's
I don't know that there's a
You don't have
benefit
to,
of
I don't
bond
think you have to
money
pass
coming
it
through
down
the
and
city.
do
I'm
it.
not
The
even
city
sure
can
we
go
do
directly
that.
in there.
I'm not sure if you can do that. It may be best to talk to Kay and the finance director, Keith Lee.
Yeah.
And see what your options are, because remember, the more specifics that you put in the paper to us, public record.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're not sure where you want to go, let us check and see if there's some type of line of credit option that's available to you through the city.
And I think a question with Keith would be along the line of, well, what line of credit extended to the authority versus just coming out of the city to do something? Where's the line that breaks those two? You know, because if the city can do it, we don't have. It doesn't mean that we have to do it. We just need to do things that are best done by the authority, because the city either can't or it's in their best interest not to. But still, so I'm a little fuzzy on that. Maybe
You know,
Kath can. Yeah.
The city has a lot more restrictions,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
procurement process than the authority probably has.
And I think we need to understand that line.
And
That would help us.
ultimately, the money coming from us doesn't help your track
Yes.
record
And-
down the
yeah,
road.
and
At
I-
some point, only you can.
Keith has done this type of stuff in his previous position,
Okay,
so
great.
we'll talk to Keith.
So I would focus on how much you want, and then we'll look at it based on the merits of what it is.
But I think back to Dave's point, what we're really looking for is a limit of access to capital, not that it goes into checking account.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, and
And the
and
bond
further
wouldn't
that,
work.
what are those circumstances when
That's
that
kind of what-
capital should be used by us or should be used by the city? What's the distinction?
Well, there were other projects on that, that we discussed that could be more specific if we wanted to talk about those or research. So anyway, we have several more weeks, I guess, that we could get very specific. But it would need to be something that we could. Just trying to think how to say this. You know, there's some discussion of expansion in front of the city hall, doing some more public works kind of spaces like that we could get behind if we wanted to get behind that, and we could talk about that. Correct? All right. So I think at this point we just need to go back and look over and kind of brainstorm over the projects, the catalytic projects we've looked at, and if there are any that fit in a more in a time frame that's consistent with when the bond money would be available and how that all works. Does that make sense? I'll say it either way. Okay, so we just took a stab at trying to get some kind of criteria down that we could then kind of give you guys our thought was to get so that you could categorize it, and then we'd come back before the bond went with something more specific. Can still do that. All right, the number 7, that's just, we're going to have that on every agenda. Just that we'll have that option available, but I don't think it's necessary today unless somebody has something that is specific with that. Is there any other?
I do think in open forum we can at least kind of recap what we think we know about projects out there, which we
Okay.
did in a meeting like 2 meetings ago when
Yeah.
we were sort of
Right.
listing out the,
Mhm.
call the pearls along the gateway in Midtown, sort of going up and down and separate between, I've been calling it kind of the village versus the 400 Holcomb Bridge scenario. They're really two different criteria for where projects are occurring. So I think as Gateway is coming through its final stages of either adoption or amendment or whatever that's kind of going toward. What's that?
All of the above.
All of the above. That, we've continued to look at this notion that beyond DOT's improvement of the road, what off Highway 9 improvements can be done. And we've talked about the Goro site, we've talked about the Midtown antique site there, kind of at the center point. We talked about the corner up there at Highway 9 and Holcomb Bridge.
There is that.
In that direction, and then coming down this way, the potential for a square rework of some kind, the Sloan Street piece, and then heading farther south to something between 120 and the river. I mean, those are sort of the big picture items, and that as you think about those, some are pure public improvements, a square or something else like that, if that were to take, and the others are public-private in terms of a project that's going to have private use that's going to be part of the equation. So I still think at some point, we've sort of listed those things out, and I really haven't heard anything emerge. I know the Sloan Street's been being looked at, but I haven't heard much about it in terms of an update on that and kind of where it's going. And the Coro site, there's been some discussions, but nothing concluded at this point. So I think that's where we're trying to do, is ultimately say if there is a project that can emerge with some degree of pace so that we can hit this August timeframe, we got to get it defined pretty quickly. And it's not always easy when you got parties that there's complexity in who's going to participate and so forth. So
We had been focused on the Coro a little bit, but then, the one that seemed most likely was actually, what I call the Mill Village one, the Sloan Street.
Sloan Street.
Monica attended the last meeting on that.
Is there anything new on that? I mean,
Um,
last we left it, the way I understand it, there was a tree that the arborist had to look at, and, it's a beautiful, enormous tree.
The last stuff there, he was looking again to see how big just point by point, the encroachment on the tree, because there
To
already
keep it
is.
alive.
There is existing encroachment on the drip line, so they're going to measure that out.
So
My
it could
understanding.
possibly
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Reliable. There are 2 historic homes. The developer wants to maintain one, the gray, and bring down the red. He was advised to hire an expert to go in there and do an assessment. And if he wants to bring the home down, he needs to pursue the demolition permit.
Do you know how far along the study is at this point?
Not at all.
That'd be
So
tired.
that's Adam Morgan.
The parking for that whole general concept is a challenge, from my understanding, and looking at his part. That could be somewhere where we could get involved in the parking. There's a city, I didn't get
Looking
close
at
enough.
putting
I got
parking-
close enough to be dangerous.
Let's look at a 2-story parking deck on the city's property where the old apartments were located.
Okay, and yes, Steve was going to look into putting in water retention there too, for at least part of the site.
That's what the developer, the BDU, Brad had mentioned, and Stu Mooring was there at the last meeting, so that's something they will.
Okay, I guess,
Feasibility of that.
So
my
that-
question is who's monitoring all that and tying it all together?
We have meetings every other month with the mayor. The next meeting is
I could send that out.
August the 14th.
That got changed, didn't it? Because I know I got,
Well, I thought it was the 20th. The mayor told me it was the 14th.
I had the
I
20th.
did too. So we just
July?
went with 14th.
Uh-huh.
And so
14th at 2.
14th
I
at
won't be here
2.
for that.
And there's some,
August 14th.
Well, I think
I'll be
wasn't,
here August, yeah.
because everybody was
staff's gonna have to further define it, but it's gonna be difficult for staff to come up with something accurate as it relates to infrastructure if we do not have
Seems like
a
everything's just-
more detailed land plan.
I mean, every other month is too long. It
Well-
shouldn't take 60 days to even do a report or a study
I'm
on it.
Unfortunately.
The developer,
Adam,
he's
he's
going
out.
to get somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, if he.
exactly.
I think
So
Nancy, wasn't he gonna be out a few weeks, so we're working around everybody's
Unfortunately.
schedule.
when
this-
Courtney laid out the length of time, that if he wanted to get demolition, that had to be in by July.
Right,
And
yeah, he was.
he'd had to get that done by July, and then it was like not until late August before you would even find out, do I have my dates right?
That's correct.
So a
We'll
long
have to
period
Go to
of,
the HPC,
yep.
but it was following his schedule. It's following what.
That's
he-
the
his
concern about
schedule.
it, is that we're lapsing into that period of time where we haven't got it nailed down. But that would be, that was one of the ones I was thinking for parking, is if you could designate
Well,
something
and
here.
also, they were talking about doing some type of financial analysis, because I would think for the city, it's gonna be important, what is the return on the investment?
And I think Adam was concerned about the return on his
He was
investment.
concerned about the return on the
He's got
investment.
concerns about the size of the project.
You know, I think we've got to be, just sort of recognize that we're wanting to take an aggressive role in support, but we are not the developers. We are not driving the bus. We are not trying to push from A to B. And I know the personalities we have at this table are geared that way, because we all do that in our private business. But yet, we're not here to, I don't think, as volunteers, and don't want to spend an enormous amount of time to say, listen, we're here when you need us. We do want to be out there and touching. We want to be at meetings where we're needed. But we can get really frustrated if we're trying to be out there pushing a project that isn't ours, it's private. You know, and if the private guy's not on the same bandwidth, then who is it for us to push something like that? I do like that we're out there, we're supportive and so forth, and we're letting people know we want to play. But unless they want to play, we'll move on to the next thing, or we'll continue to explore when whoever's ready to step to the table. So
Also,
I think
Adam had
Put
to
very
talk to
well.
some other property owners also.
And I'm feeling kind of the same thing with the Coro piece over here.
yeah.
Because knowing the physical limitations, knowing the tenants that they're looking at,
That's what I thought too.
having done deals with them, and working on current deals with them, knowing kind of the range of dollars involved, I'm having a hard time just doing the dumb math and having it make any sense at all because of the constraints that we're given. When you throw a price, on the front end of $3 million, and you got a bunch of tenants in there that have to be relocated and demolition, and the size of the piece is actually too small as it sits for what we're even talking to the specific user about. So there's no room left for juicing it with other things. I mean, the whole thing is really, really hard to make sense of, and that may be the reason why the existing owner isn't jumping up and down with giddy, is because it doesn't make any sense. If it did, he would have already done it.
But I think that's where the DDA is like, if it was such a slam dunk on the private sector, it would be done. And right now, in order to get enough critical mass, I think it was the terminology used last time, if not for the DDA, is kind of easing it over those situations where the current market right now may not justify it. But if that got up and got started, that the catalyst that it would create would, indeed this one would eventually, would make sense over a longer period of time than a normal return would be.
Well, it's hard to
expected.
see.
For example, if it would help, if your involvement somehow, there's some sort of financing arrangement the DDA could do that would help Adam with his return, some subsidy that sweetens it for him somehow, that,
Well,
to be able to get the
with
project
his limited,
going.
I mean, just on the Adam thing, he's got 2 properties. He doesn't have enough room for parking if he can't cut down the tree and he can't take down, he has these other restrictions. I mean, so if the
There's also a restriction on that property, the city's property, Oxbow property, that, where the apartments were located, where he's showing his, which we need to tell him, Charles, where he's showing his parking deck was purchased with CDBG funds. So there's restrictions on those funds, on the use of that property.
I need to check with,
We need to check. We'll
with
check
our
that.
representatives at Fulton County, but even though it was demolished under slum and blight, it may also need to benefit low and moderate income people, which the road connection would, the parking garage, it'd be really hard to show a benefit to low and moderate income people.
I think, all of us are used to good return, doing deals that good returns are walking away. This may be the biggest challenge we have is looking at some deals that are like, the horizon is much longer than we're accustomed to. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely.
And that's going to be, that's going to be difficult, because you're right, when you start doing numbers, it's like, but that's why that hadn't gotten done.
Well, the thing is, in this economy, first of all, low interest rates I don't think are that big of a motivator, because we can go out there and we get low interest rates. You know, that's real world, and you know, you expect projects that are not doing that well to be at deep discounts. And you know, so far, just the one thing we're looking at is at full peak of the market pricing. It has not been adjusted to reflect where we're really at, you know, in the real world. So that doesn't help. So you know, I'm just thinking maybe those are not the deals that, you know, are gonna make any sense. And a lot of times the patience of just waiting for something, you know, for some reality to hit. You know, if Coro passed on their deal and it gets back to real world, you know, as long as there's a big fish hanging out there on the end of the line, nobody's going to do anything. So in a way, it's negative that they're even in it. You know, it's kind of like as soon as the government gets, you know, if somebody gets wind that the government's assembling something or we're putting something together, it's the same thing. You know, the price just goes up.
Well, I do think the nature of something that we want to do, we, the city, would have you in an area that can have a halo effect, that in the Coro case doesn't pencil out privately, but there's a level of investment that you make that we have to substantiate as a return in other halo effect. Or, said another way, if we don't do that piece in some way, it might become something else that really destroys any opportunity at this time in Roswell's history. We've got to think real long term, that we missed an opportunity to create. And we would all agree that that corner area, the Norcross Highway 9, is hugely important if you're looking 20 years out, right? And so to me, that's the...
Well, it's almost like your yield. You know, where we do deals, we look at the yield from that property.
Yeah.
Your investment, your yield comes back from that property. Whereas from the DDA standpoint, our yield can come much off that property.
I would qualify one other thing with that, and that's back to where Charles was smart enough to guide us back in the, okay, is it speculative or non-speculative? Remember that? Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I feel more comfortable being in the camp that if we were paying for something to make it work, but it, you know, it was a public investment that was probably pushing the edge, the only way you can think about doing it is the use, the architecture, and whatever we're doing is close to guarantees us getting to the place we want to 15 years from now.
Did anybody else take a look at that stuff that's up on the Dropbox that I showed y'all last time? Or I did not send it out for everybody to fill it in. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked, but there's a blank spreadsheet thing where I took all those projects.
Right.
And I'd love for you guys to go in and rank them, and then I was going to average them, and I didn't send it out to you. But it does say blank on its catalyst analysis on the Dropbox. Lonnie, the Dropbox. Make a copy.
I won't take the original.
just put your name. If you fill it out, put it back in with your name on it. I'll average them, and I think that analysis gets pretty interesting when you see. You know, it was really easy. We had all these projects. It was like impact. Well, I'm going high, 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 and I'm like, okay, you got to, you know, 1 to 5. How do you break that out? I mean, of course we wouldn't have picked it if it wasn't high impact. But what is, you know, is it the financial impact? Is it, you know, attractiveness of the city? I mean, what are the impacts? And maybe we can, any recommendations to changing that. But it was a pretty interesting analysis, I think, if we're presenting, particularly if we are offering up analysis to council to show that we've gotten there with some, starting with Charles's.
Well, I guess my conclusion is for when we walk out of here that, and I think I heard some consensus on this, is that we are accessible, we're ready to be creative, we'll bring every tool to bear, we'll be on the bus, but I don't think we're driving the bus. And I think that's, you know, that's the...
Well, are you saying that we wait till we're called, or?
Well, not on those deals anyway.
No, I don't. I'm not saying. I'm just saying we can, you know, take a good example of Adam and the staff. We're trying to work some things out, and we can get in the middle of that and, you know, be another third wheel or whatever. And I'm just, we've had a lot of meetings and we've tried to be very accommodating, and we've met, 3 at a time with different folks, and and we're out there, we're trying to answer questions, and we're sending the message we're open for business and whatever.
As I would like to say that from the standpoint of input on the catalytic projects, I think that we've been there. We've been very responsive, but we can't advocate. We can be responsive, we can provide input. You can lead a horse to water, but you
Yeah.
can't make it drink.
Well, we can advocate. I mean, some of those even we were taught, right?
But you can't, but
push.
Each one of these, we have gotten to a point where it's, it's in the ball's in someone else's court. At least I know on Adams.
Exactly.
On Adams it is. I've never
407.
I've never had the level of cooperation that I've had, that I've seen from city staff and a private developer. It was incredible. I don't think we can push that one.
But I'd like to think that we got the rock rolling, because he came to your office. We immediately set up a meeting with Steve over here in transportation. At that meeting, it became very clear that the road wasn't even funded yet. That we were all under the impression at that point that they've paid for these apartments to go down. They're working on taking the next house in the lineup. I mean, there's money being spent. Surely, and I've seen, 10 different versions over the last 5 years. Surely this is funded, or it's in the budget or something. And it's like, no, it's not. So it's like Steve has the methodology of getting the girl pregnant and then expecting the baby to be born. And that's kind of the way it seems like it's functioning here. And that's being very blunt, but don't put those in the minutes. But I mean, that's what's happening. You wouldn't be buying those projects unless this road was going to go through. There's no functionality there that I see. So, but that changes the dynamics, because even Adam, I mean, we were all thinking that this road is going through. So
the road is going to go through. We had the opportunity with some federal dollars to take that building down. Now, had we not taken advantage of those funds, then the city would not only be faced with the design and moving the road, but the big hurdle was that building. And so that's why the building came down. So
one thing is, I don't. The road really isn't that important from the standpoint of the catalytic project. Going back to where we are, because it really doesn't matter. The rest of the project's over to the side, and we can work around.
I think from a transportation standpoint, even from a land planning standpoint, we think the road is important because it kind of opens up and
and then the historic buildings and the tree, and I mean, all of it fits together.
Yes.
And I'm not being dismissive. I'm just saying that from Adam's standpoint.
No, truthfully, what Adam wants to do, what he said he wanted to do, if he's talking about restaurants or just retail, he can do that now.
Yeah, but anyway, I just think that the DDA has been very responsive and been Johnny on the spot. I just don't say that we could do anything more. And I've seen, and the same thing goes with Cora, with us having and facilitating. And I think to the extent that we advocate and are reactive as kind of a private sector oriented, experienced real estate group reaching out like that, it does make people comfortable. Because anybody that comes here is going to know someone that's on this board.
Well, and you also have the advantage, there's a lot of projects like the Oxbow Extension that are out there. We're getting them, with every little pot of money, we get them as close to ready to go as we can. And you are in a position to get the word out that, when money comes available, we have to pick which one of these comes first. And if you want your project to come first, you need to, here's their path to do that. And I think that's a huge.
I have a question/comment. It kind of goes back. But if there is a component of a deal that's being worked out there that we think and would be objectionable, do we go in, in the preliminary stages? Do we go to them and we tell them, if this is part of your deal, then this way, whatever that may be, you're gonna run into objection. Is that a
Well, I mean, you bring that point up. That's I've visited the Decatur DDA, Now, they have a downtown development plan. It's very specific. And when a developer comes in, the city goes and looks to the DDA to give the first comment. And frankly, the planning commission looks for the DDA's written resolution of support or not. I mean, that's how they operate. Now, they have a very distinctive plan. They have something to compare it to as opposed to, you know.
How it's linked to the.
Yeah,
plan.
it's linked to the
How
plan.
it linked is how it's linked to the zoning. If my property falls in the comp plan and the comp plan supports it and I'm meeting all the criteria, I'm not asking for any variances, city's hard pressed not
Right.
to say no, even if you hate the project.
Right, okay.
But, you know, Decatur has had years of perfecting their
Yeah.
plans, and all their plans are like this.
Right.
They work.
They're linked.
Well, it's a much smaller
And
area.
it's a much smaller area too. We're trying to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you look at our, the comp plan, the SCGP,
Right.
and eventually the UDC, you'll see those plans connected. It's just that unfortunately, the city of Roswell is not where some of those cities are. And that's why I say, you gotta remember, you're kinda doing a marathon and not a sprint. And I know everybody's all excited about getting something done, but it's gonna take a while.
Right.
We'll have some the gateway will be a master plan and be used.
What about?
I mean, it's getting there, but I think the other thing too, Ralph, to your point about, you know, getting quick to some position, I do think as our body, I would advocate we listen a whole lot more than make statements, because we are pro-economic development, that's our charge, and so we want to continue to find ways to make things work as opposed to, because the public's going to weigh in no matter what, you know, the council's going to obviously make the ultimate vote relative to something that is going to be a variance from a plan, you know,
Right.
and if it gets loud enough, we may weigh in, but I don't think we need to be the first one to say, nah, we think you ought to go this way.
Right.
I'd rather be responding, finding ways to accommodate, can we get along, and they'll go, whoever's developing, we'll go through a public process, and, you know, we can obviously listen to the public too about what's being said in any kind of zoning or what, if it goes to that, so, yeah, you know, a couple of years from now, we may be a whole lot more skilled and understand everything a little bit better, but I'd caution not to be making bold statements at this stage of the game yet, and be listening more than speaking.
A question. One of the things that I've heard in the last couple of weeks is developers coming into town, and either by, you know, Lou Oliver's talked to us about that. He's different people of, you know, we know of other groups that are kind of coming in and trying to do stuff. How can we help facilitate those developers feeling comfortable about investing here? I mean, the suggestion, of course, you know, probably all heard about doing a master plan. Is that something that, you know, of just a little core area that would help developers see the possibilities that we see? Very, very high level. I think some of the people want really detailed, but I'm just throwing that out. That is a problem coming into town, is understanding what can be put together and understanding what opportunities really exist. I mean, what role do we do in that?
I mean, if you come in and I think Steve Strout and I have somewhat perfected our process. If we know the developer and he's coming in, Steve calls me, we schedule a meeting, we bring all of the appropriate staff in place. You know, we can have a member of the DDA there also when we have those meetings. You know, for most developers, what they're looking for in addition to the land and the location is the zoning appropriate, is the process, because the zoning is going to determine how long it's going to take. And if we can show them that that the zoning is appropriate, then we're usually a lot more successful with them getting in. You know, like.
Do you have information about? I mean, do you share with them information about who owns which parcels?
Yes.
Things like that. So you have all that and can tell them. All right.
And I do think there's room. Part of the DDA's function in a lot of places is that outreach and marketing to a point of,
Yeah.
you know, this is how, and that may be, until you have something to do, that may be the best thing to be doing. And you know, we can't master plan private property, but if you guys have interest in doing that kind of
And we've got the input. It's not like we're going to be crafting up our own vision. I mean, we've got the economic development plan, we've got the Midtown, we've got a lot of community input already. I mean, it's not like I'm talking about a, multi-$100,000 deal. I'm talking about something kind of, a visual that you can start talking. I mean, does that?
Let me ask a question. If I get a developer that came in, Steve and I, we're partnered, work together,
Yeah.
we have everybody there, including the DDA. What is it at this time that the DDA can offer them?
Well, I guess it would depend on the project, right? I mean,
No, I think that you're
You
leading
know
right
what
to
I'm
the next
saying?
point. What's our toolkit?
Yeah, what's your
Toolbox.
toolkit?
What's our toolbox?
What is your
So,
toolkit?
I think you walked into what I was exactly thinking, which
Yes.
is we've been out talking about projects, educating, listening, and so forth, and now the next step, and Stephanie's offered multiple times to me to say, let's sit down with the economic development manual and let's go through the loan products and the abatement products, and the whole sort of litany of things to say that and I did that little spreadsheet that some of it's rural. We can't go
Yeah,
down that route.
that's
But some of it is. So I think a next step is that beyond our outreach is what are the tools? We talked a little bit about this with the city.
What we're trying to do is figure out how to, what is the current status of TADS and how does that?
Yeah, so
Have a look
I
at
think
that.
if we're spending some time over the next several months, it's to get our toolbox. What is it that we can execute? Under what conditions can we execute? If a developer rolls into town, Alice can say, you know what, the DDA has gotten a grant access or some kind of loan program through the state, and it fits the following criteria. Hey, this is pretty close to what they have. So to me, next step is to develop our toolkit, and if we spent the next 2, 3, 4 months, whatever, really understanding that, because none of us really have a feel for what's in our toolkit, because we haven't opened it up yet. To me, that's the next step. So now we can be responsive to say, all right, you got a gap. Here's how the DDA can help close a gap.
This is,
And you guys do have a work plan y'all developed
Yeah.
at the retreat. You need to go back and look at what those dates are, when the milestones are on that short-term work plan to make sure you're keeping up with what you said you're going to do. I don't know, I haven't looked at it a little bit.
Because you were going to make a presentation
Yes,
on
it is in your
the TAD and stuff.
No, I know.
You hit a, we
Hit a
have
wall, so.
we have real world things that are putting food on the table. So, because we did, and the urgency, like going back to the when we made that work plan, we didn't know about the bond referendum, and the reason we kind of went is this is an opportunity that if it goes by, it's gone. I mean, if we don't get some things specified for this, we miss it. So this is one of our toolkits in our financial, just like kind of our short
Yeah,
term.
I don't think we really know the
But
boundaries and the conditions and all that.
well,
I mean,
the
that's what
push
we're
for a
learning. I
big
mean-
project, almost artificially is what's created, I mean, it's not really a bunny trail, but yet it's taken us off of
Absolutely.
off of the planned course for sure.
Absolutely, no question.
You know,
He said
I-
she was going to be done again in October, and if y'all could bring this to her, if you haven't done anything, she's going to give her feelings.
And we've done a lot. I mean, I've got to tell you, there's a lot on that work plan that we have
Okay.
dealt with,
And a TAD is a tool, but it's not an automatic tool. There's a lot of, the city, 2 years ago, get approval to become the redevelopment powers, but there's several more steps that has to be done before you create a TAD, and even after you jump through those steps, it has to be approved by which state department?
The DRs.
Department of Revenue does the
Yeah.
tax.
They certify
Yeah.
the beginning the beginning.
Plus, you got to get
value.
the school, you got
You
Fulton
gotta deal
County.
with the school,
Have
you
you
gotta
tried
deal
it?
with Fulton
Yeah.
County.
Right. So.
That's going to be fun.
How much of that do they cover at that Georgia Economic Development? Just this plays the GETA, yeah, the
Seminar
4-day,
coming up.
the 4-day training seminar
Oh, the academy?
academy.
Oh, the academy.
Yeah.
It's
what-
an economic development academy.
Yeah, Economic Development Academy. I know
They
that
may,
they just kind of touch on some of that.
They changed the curriculum.
I looked,
stuff
yeah,
for a year.
I looked at the website and it's on, or, I mean, I don't know, I think I think we're beyond that. I mean,
On the,
we're a little ahead of that area. That's part of what, this one is different, right? This is the one that's in LaGrange.
That's downtown
Right.
development.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The Georgia Academy, though, their training's gonna differ for this region than it is for some of the other regions. I mean, that was a big recommendation when I went through that I made to them, and I know it a lot of other people made to them, because we felt like it was not reflective of where we're at in Atlanta. And I know that they changed a good amount of the curriculum after that.
My thinking is that maybe we could divide and conquer with some of us. There's several training opportunities that are coming up. I know that there's some bond stuff that's coming up at the Chamber of Commerce. That's later on. I know I got an email about it and reserved something. It's in September. There's a few things. If we're going to build the toolbox, there's. we
To
can-
me, I see the energy being built around that over the next little while. We'll keep an ear on these projects and we'll be responsive.
Then maybe we could bring something.
Stay close to
Then
the
your
council.
toolbox is, hey, you get the RDA, you get the DDA, this is what they all can offer.
I'll keep an eye on the EDA, the Georgia Economic Developers Association, because they are likely to have a program at some point.
And it would be more advanced when.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a you can, if you Google that,
Academy.
that Academy,
I went
and
there.
they have a little talk about it, and I personally,
Their website's out of date.
oh, it is, well,
Yeah.
that could be too, you know, it just really sounded more, it was very generalist, and so I just felt like that.
It is
It's
pretty
probably not,
general. It's
yeah.
pretty basic, but it's also a good opportunity to meet people in the area. I thought that was the best thing I got out of it, was there's people I know
But
now because of that.
the website also talked about team building and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
that, and there's some leadership involved. But the best people to talk to is if you wanted to find out what's going on at the county trainings, are either Kim Carter, the one who's on that email, or Corin Thornton, who she's the director of the academy. And I can get her contact information for you. I have it. And she can tell you what the curriculum is.
They're gonna I'll have one shortly, they're gonna email materials to kind of go through it, and I signed up for it over the
Oh, that's
weekend.
right.
You're going to go to it.
Just so y'all know, I'm meeting with Steve Stroud every other week, just to keep up with keeping us kind of mashed in, so we don't miss what they're doing. We're inconsistent. So there's a lot of, I know everybody's meeting with different people are sharing. It's really important to kind of keep the knowledge base out there. Because I think, you talk about what we've done so far. One of the things that I think Roswell acknowledges, they have struggled in the past of a reputation of not being an easy place to develop or do business. And us being out there and just talking and reaching out a hand, that alone just sends a different message. Even if we don't, we're still putting our tools together. So let me summarize, just make sure I'm clear. We're holding this, but at least we've got some language to start with where we could insert a project if one comes to fruition, kind of comes together in a place where we want to ask the city to invest bond money on behalf of the city. And keep your eyes open. I mean, it may just be the missing piece in a project that that the city needs to kind of step up and put in place. And we're going to keep working on building the toolbox. And that may be something, since you kind of took the lead on that, maybe there's not, maybe we could look at breaking that out, if there's a logical place to break out where each one of us could become an expertise in
Well,
funding mechanisms.
I'll pledge to get back on that in the next 30 days. I'm going to come see you pretty quick.
Okay.
So.
Am I
So I can
missing
get a
anything?
roadmap.
So on that part, we'll still keep moving with all these catalyst projects that we've been talking about and getting more information. I wish Betty was here. She did say that Clyde had done a different drawing that was more transportation.
For the out here,
Yes.
transportation and community development has met a couple of times and looked at different options regarding opening up City Hall out here and dealing with Highway 9 such that something not as dramatic as DPZ had presented, and also allowing connectivity from Canton Street over to the parking lot here. And we presented that to, and it's mainly a transportation driven right now.
Right.
They presented that to a committee. Committee made some recommendations.
When you say committee, you mean
The
transportation?
committee, the mayor and council committee.
Okay.
Community Development and Transportation Committee. And transportation is, we were asked to go back and look at some different things.
Okay, all right.
So
So
but
just so
that-
y'all
we
know,
think
there's a
that
little
is
update on that particular
We think
project.
that is a good, from a staff standpoint, that is a good project that does not involve another developer, that is, low budget, and that will be somewhat of a catalyst because you open up and you create a square and you get connectivity to Cannon Street and also start a connectivity to, Grove.
But there may be a couple of parcels in there to buy to do
Yes.
something with, so
Yeah.
we definitely need to get that to these guys to look it over. You don't have one, do you?
What?
Have one we can get a copy of, and we have a copy of it somewhere.
I don't have it. I'm sure that if a couple of you guys want to meet, I'd be glad to show it to you.
Okay. Is it large? It's not, you don't have
I've
anything?
got one that's been home.
It's like this, but he has larger ones, he has different sketches and.
Could you put it on our Dropbox? Is that possible?
So what on Dropbox? I'm sorry, the
This plan.
sketches that for the new town
Square
square.
drawings.
Will stamp it has not yet been approved by the city of
Okay.
Roswell, you know.
But no, I
But
think
it's
it set
still
the
a
stage
good-
where input would be
Yeah,
welcome.
that would be good.
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
be glad to do that.
Because it's definitely a transportation
It's-
alternative, but it's a little
It's
more of the economic
transforming
development land
for that area
planning
there.
That'd be
area.
quite important. Okay.
Who's going to LaGrange?
I haven't signed up, but
I want to go. I'm pretty sure I'm going to go.
Dates of that?
I'd like to.
Okay.
It's in here, it's this thing.
It's in your packet. It's
That's
the,
it, LaGrange?
Yeah, that's, this
it's
is
the
that thing.
22nd and the 23rd. It seems like most of the real activity and stuff like that's on the 23rd, Thursday. Is that right?
Yes,
Sort
the
of.
24th, I mean, wait a minute.
That's a Friday.
Yeah, the Friday, there are some things in the morning on Friday, but I don't think there are anything that you want to stay for. At least the way this schedule is written out now. Some of these things, they haven't filled in all their sessions yet or anything like that. If you'll get more information.
I'm thinking about going and spending the night and maybe doing something else.
Are we a Georgia Downtown Association member as a DDA?
I'm a member. I don't know how that works as far as your registration for this, but if you go ahead and do your registration and hotel on your own and just keep your receipts and submit them to me, and we could take one car down there, a city car, or you can drive on your own and get mileage. But we just have a mileage form I can get you to fill out.
Check with the city car, because I don't.
You don't think I can transport them?
I'm not sure, check.
Oh, maybe not.
They don't have the right insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one overnight.
Police cars
Yeah,
can now go
that-
through the
okay.
toll for free.
Yeah. I don't think.
You don't mind
they
riding
want
in one?
Does anybody have
Okay,
any
you're
additional
gonna be there,
ones?
right?
Yeah, it's good for them.
At
You going to
LaGrange?
LaGrange? Figure it's your home turf.
I know. I'm trying to change some things around. I'm supposed to be in Charleston those days.
There's a workshop that you might be interested in that, it's more like a tour, actually, of Dash for LaGrange's projects.
Yeah, I've
You would
toured-
really enjoy that.
I've toured those
You have toured
directly
them
with
before?
them,
Yeah.
yeah. We're working
They're
down there.
great. Yeah.
We're
It's
involved
great
with the authority, we're
agency.
involved with Callaway, we're involved with,
Yeah.
Dash, too.
I also included just a list of the things that are coming up. I printed out the calendar that I have on Google for you guys.
Okay, yeah.
So there's just information about the Historic Gateway Master Plan, information open house, the marketing workshop that RVA is having, and all that's on that little list. So if anything you want to go to,
The
it's there.
SCDP is next
The SCDP, that should be on there. Do I not have that on there?
Thursday.
Oh, yeah, it is on there. Okay.
Yeah, it's on there.
I only have one other thing. We're also meeting with our budget director, a couple other people on Thursday about how we're getting
Or money?
your money. Yes. Yeah. So I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
We'll ask you that
Google.
question regarding line of credit or something to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're wrapped up. Anybody have anything else they need to?
With the monthly breakfast with the mayor, I got a strange email the other day, it came out on the thing by December, put it on your calendar.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know
Is
where-
that some kind of robo sending?
Yeah,
that-
I think they probably put it in
He's probably
first,
scheduling
ongoing.
out, Robin is probably
Well,
scheduling the.
As I understand it, Dave's going to coordinate that and pick two people. So
But she
we-
requi-
We should just ignore those and just let, when Dave says, are
Yeah.
you available, yes or no? and
Or
then-
just
Probably
put-
send
if
it
you
to
wanna put-
everybody and.
Yeah, Robin felt like she needed to send it to the whole
Yeah.
board, and I explained to her that.
Okay.
Yeah, the first one's coming up Wednesday, July 18th. It's a breakfast, which actually I got Ralph on that one.
Okay.
But then I had,
Oh, thank you.
I need one other person who wants to join me.
July 18th.
That's a Wednesday morning.
Thank you.
I'm flying in that night before. I'm scheduled to be there for
Last time I got the email from him.
Yeah, right, several, and he changed it, so July 18th is the next one, so
That's a Wednesday, I could tentatively.
if you want to come. And I mean, I'll rotate in the other two each time, so everybody will get it. It's once a
And
month.
that's, At Jay Christopher's,
At Crossroads,
92, what time?
8 o'clock.
I think it was 8.
8 o'clock.
You put me down for the one after that.
You want to
Dave.
do this one?
Okay.
I don't think I'm going to be in town.
Yeah, I'd like to go to that one too. That's August, right?
No, the August one is the next, I mean, the next one's July.
Right.
July 18th.
Put me on for August.
But I would
if
be
no one else is
August.
there.
August, okay. So you got
I'm in
September.
September.
You and
Oh,
Richard.
no, you go August then. I'll go September. I'm fine, really.
Okay. I got to get out of here, so I don't know if we're ready to adjourn.
We do have one more thing. I forgot. I need a nomination motion. I'm so sorry. Motion to approve the minutes of our executive session. There was one change, which was to modify the date to that date. Do I have a motion to approve minutes?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Done. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you guys very much.
Stay full.
Yeah.
Because I'm willing to, if she thinks it's worth the time, I'm willing to do that. How about run?
Well, it looks like you're on track.
I mean, not,
Very thorough. I don't know.